place. Dante's Inferno, the devil's maze. It's a good world, good world gone bad.
Oh, hey guys, what's up? Matt LeGrand here, and today I wanted to talk about figuring out like a season, like scheduling a season. And this is, you know, basically the way I wanted to set it up was, you know, how I personally set up a season. So triathlon season is typically a lot of the summer months, where a lot of the fitness and stuff like that you'll put together will come in. Basically, you know, that may be set up in the spring or whatever, like however you designate your year. So what I thought I would do today was just basically like start with how I, you know, lay out a particular goal for a particular event. A lot of times in triathlon they'll describe it as their A race, and then kind of how I work backwards from there. So the way that I do it, without further ado, is starting with a particular race in mind. A particular race and sometimes a particular time or place. Basically, you know, do the best you can on a particular day in the future. And so the way that I work backwards from that is I literally like find out the date of that particular event and put it on the calendar, and I just use like a digital calendar. And then I start working my way backwards. Oftentimes what I'll do is, this is somewhat controversial, but I'll race myself into shape a little bit. So I like to basically prep for that big A race by actually racing a couple of times. And I think there's some real benefit to doing this. I guess I can make an entire separate video just on this, but the benefits are you can test your race day equipment, whether that's like a new set of tires, a new wheel, you know, whatever it is. Maybe you've got a new disc wheel and you don't want to break out brand new equipment for your big A race that you've trained all year for. So what I'll do is I'll start with that A race, and then I'll drop that on a calendar. And maybe what we can do is I can show you a screen recording or something like that. And we can kind of show you like, here's a calendar, you know, we're gonna drop our A race on here. And then I know that there's some good B races and things like that that I enjoy doing, where I can test some equipment. Maybe I wanna try something different in transition, or whatever you wanna do with a particular triathlon. You can drop those in within your B races to kind of help you get prepared for your A race. So I will show you calendar, and we'll drop some races down. We'll basically set it up. Since I don't actually have this, maybe this isn't a great year to do this video, but I don't have a particularly like a specific A race that I'm training for. But what we could do is we can make one up, slap it on the calendar, work our way backwards that way, the way that I set things up. So what's interesting is you'll set that A race up on your calendar, your personal calendar. You'll drop some of your B races in. You have less control over when these races are. Yes, you could come up with your own mock triathlon event, and definitely we'll do that. But a lot of times it's nice to actually have like a real race environment to kind of test things. So those B races, you have less control over which dates those specific events are going to happen upon. So what I like to do is drop them on the calendar and then schedule the training around those A races and B races. So let's take a look at that right now. Okay, so I rolled through this calendar and kind of went through my process of, starting with a particular event, in this case an Ironman on July 28th, and then worked my way backwards, just putting in some like key workouts and key dates and things like that. Finished and looked at the recording time, and it was like 25 minutes, and I was like, geez, I can't imagine anyone's going to sit through this. And so what I decided to do was speed through that process, but also go over some specific details and just try to hit the highlights over just like maybe some key elements that you guys can take away. So, one being like begin with the end in mind, and that is, starting with dropping your A race in that particular date, and then going straight from there to putting other kind of dates on there that, you have less control over, in my case, right, that's like family vacations, travel days, and things like that, right? Even traveling to the race, I would drop on there. So in this case, it's like travel to Whistler, Whistler on the 28th. And then, let's see, family vacation, there's just that dropped in there, knowing full well that it's going to be extremely hard to get some of those key workouts in when traveling, spending time with family, whatever it is that you have to do, maybe visiting in-laws, who knows? I don't know what. Crazy. What could happen? Okay, so next piece of the puzzle was starting with the race in mind. I know that I kind of need to wrap up all my training about 3 weeks prior to my big race so that you have a little bit of taper time. So you'll see little things like I'll even write in like last big workout, things like that. We'll do maybe a longer swim, usually I'll try to put all three together. Longer swim, longer bike ride, and then come off the bike and do something, a little bit hard run-wise. I think right here it's like 3K swim, 120-mile bike ride, 9 miles hard. But each person can have their individual like hard last workout piece. And then the long run isn't as long as it is, prior to that. Like in this particular schedule, I have myself building up to 23 miles. But because of that super hard workout, the previous day, I'm still doing a long run, but it's not quite as intense. And then I might come in here knowing full well that this particular long run is basically 2 weeks prior. So again, this one might be something even lighter, 14, 16, and sometimes, I'll definitely suggest doing a range of distance. You give yourself a range. You don't feel like you're tied specifically to a particular distance or time. You go a lot by how you feel. Highly recommend doing something like that. But after you've plugged in those travel vacations, you've plugged in some of your key training sessions, it's pretty easy to work your way backwards. In this case, I just kind of dabbled with like the long run. I didn't go into a lot of different things about swimming, and I didn't go through like a lot of the details on weekly workouts, but you'll get an idea on how to build up to that long run. In this case, I got a race scheduled, for the 23rd there, that half Ironman distance. So the Sunday after that was a recovery, not a long run. But prior to that, 19 to 21, and then we run to vacation days. So a long run kind of gets stuffed in here. 17, but again, it should probably be a range. Another 17-mile long run there. And as we start to work our way back, you can actually see on this particular month that you can kind of see a little bit more of a clear progression, right? Like 17, 14 to 16, 12 to 14, long run of 10 to 13, and you're slowly building yourself up. And the other thing that you'll often hear coaches talk about is, these different cycles of training. One way to describe it would be like a macro cycle would be maybe like you're training for an entire year. It could be like a triathlon season, where maybe in the fall you're doing a lot of running and things like that. In the wintertime you're doing a fair amount of swimming. And then, as you get into the triathlon season, you're doing more race specific stuff. They would kind of describe that year or whatever as a macro cycle. And then they have, some people call it like maybe like their season, their mesocycle, and then a microcycle. But what I would encourage you guys to do is forget about terminology. It's a lot less important, but do remember that periodization of your training is important. So, you see these slow buildups, the slow ramp up of the long run. And really what I would suggest doing is being critical about it, where you're maybe going up 2 weeks or maybe up 3 weeks and then kind of having like 1 week drop down. And that's a pretty standard protocol. And I would play with that. You build for 2 or 3 weeks and then drop down like a recovery week. And I think that will help your body adapt. I mean, that's the whole goal of all this training, is basically to stress your body, have your body adapt within like a recovery period, and then do it again and stress it to hopefully bring it to a higher level. So again, trying to make this a little bit faster, you can glance back to current date, previous long run of 8 miles, and then I'm slowly building my way up with some dropped in. This duathlon, for example, is a B race, and for those B races, again, this is your chance to test new tires, test new wheels. Maybe it's a duathlon, so what shoes am I going to race in? It's all about kind of like experimenting with the things that you don't want to experiment on your A race day. Okay, so yeah, thanks for checking that out. Hopefully you're able to see the calendar and kind of get an idea of how I do things. I definitely don't think it's the only way to do it. So what I would suggest is if there's a different, methodology for, setting up your particular triathlon season, what I suggest is, if you can briefly like comment below on the video, just even if you have some like different ideas or suggestions, I think other people are checking out this video, trying to figure out how they want to set up their season, and maybe just getting ideas. So, read through the comments, and, someone may have like a completely different way to do it that might work fantastic for, all of you guys. So, I do appreciate any of those comments. The other thing, if you subscribe to the video, there's also this notification bell in the corner. You can hit that and you'll be notified via email, or I think if you set your mobile device, you can get notifications that way. And that's of any new videos that I post. So I am going to try to post some things in the future, and I can link to them. But, again, like, yes, we have this A race, but, how do you set a proper goal and then go about refining that goal? That's one of the things I want to chat about with you guys. But so if you have ideas on that, feel free to comment below, check it out. And thanks a lot for watching. I do appreciate it. Talk to you guys soon.